To this day, I love panoramic images, and I think owning the XPan really helped me understand the beauty that you can get in a good panoramic photo. Here's an old XPan photo I took of an English farmer's field at sunset, and here's a couple of photos I took in Bergamo, Italy. You could also create super cool vertical panoramas, like this one in Toronto taken from the top of the CN Tower, and this one on the streets of Toronto. I'd love to get another XPan again and start shooting film, so I decided to try and recreate that XPan experience using my digital camera. There were three things I had to work out. What was the field of view in my XPan and what lens could I use today to replicate this? What was the XPan's panoramic aspect ratio and how could I achieve this in Lightroom? And how could I simulate the panoramic viewfinder experience of my original XPan? The first thing I did was search online for some help working out the field of view. When I had my XPan, I had the 45mm lens, so I wanted to replicate the field of view on my digital camera. So I knew the standard frame size for 35mm film or full frame digital cameras was 36mm wide by 24mm high. In panoramic mode, my XPan shot a negative 65mm wide by 24 high. It was exactly the same height as a standard 35mm frame size, it was just wider. So I divided the XPan's 65mm frame width by the standard 36mm frame width. That gave me a ratio of 1.8. I could now work out the equivalent focal length on my full frame digital camera by dividing the focal length of the XPan lens by this value 1.8. 45 divided by 1.8 gave me a 25mm equivalent focal length on a full frame camera. This meant that I could use my 24 to 70mm zoom lens set at 25mm to give me roughly the same horizontal angle of view as the original 45mm XPan lens. Shout out to Dan Carr on shuttermuse.com for the article that helped me understand all of this. The second thing I needed to work out was the aspect ratio of a panoramic XPan image. I would need this ratio later in Lightroom when it came to cropping a full frame image to the aspect ratio of a panoramic XPan image. This was pretty easy to work out. The aspect ratio was 65mm wide by 24 high, or in other words 1 to 2.7. I ended up needing this value of 2.7 for the viewfinder hack that I'd look at next. The third and most tricky thing to work out was how to simulate the XPan's panoramic viewfinder experience in a modern digital camera. Most digital cameras let you set an aspect ratio for your photos, but you probably won't be able to set a custom one to match the XPan's 65 to 24 aspect ratio. So I decided to make a bit of a hack for the view screen to give me that feeling of looking through an XPan's viewfinder. The first thing I did was to grab my digital mirrorless camera, turn it on and measure the physical size of the LCD screen, and then cut out a template on thin white paper. I then carefully attached this to the LCD screen with rubber bands, turned on the camera and set a super long shutter speed to make the screen go white. I then very gently drew dots to mark the visible area of the live view of the photo and took the paper off. The physical width of the visible viewfinder area was 60mm wide. So I divided 60mm by the aspect ratio 2.7 that I calculated earlier, and that gave me a value of about 22mm. That meant I needed to cut out a hole 60mm wide by 22mm high in the center of the visible screen area on the paper. Make sure you hit the like button if you're enjoying this video so far. Once I was happy it looked okay, I made a final version with some thick black card. So I set my lens to 25mm and used the screen with the cardboard cutout to compose the images. Once I'd imported the photos into Lightroom, the first thing I did to edit each image was to input a custom crop ratio of 65 to 24. This let me crop the photo to match the XPan's panoramic aspect ratio.